The diminished critical thinking and idiotic beliefs that now prevails throughout our society is by deliberate design. It was deliberately achieved by dumbing down the society by not promoting analytical thinking. It's exactly as the late comedian George Carlin said it. He said, governments don't want a population capable of critically thinking. They want obedient workers, people just smart enough to run the machines and just dumb enough to passively accept their situation. Now, in the past, it was easier for the ruling class to control the masses because they controlled all of the narratives. But with the invention of the internet, they lost that monopoly over information. The invention of a supercomputer by Philip E. Migwali, a Nigerian computer scientist, which led to the invention of the internet, and with the creation of the computer code simply known as .com by an African-American computer scientist named Emmett McHenry, which allows ordinary people to surf the web without studying computer science, now the masses have access to unlimited verifiable information. Because the ruling elites lost their monopoly over information, this therefore changed their suppression target. They now deploy disinformation propaganda that keeps the masses dumbfounded. This is why white government propagandists created the claim that there are many truths and that everyone is entitled to their own truths. And we've witnessed the result of this propaganda campaign, in which people are now saying that they identify as something else and that it should be respected because it's their truths, because everyone's entitled to their truths. This is, however, totally an untrue statement. It's a fallacy designed to keep the masses in a state of mayhem as everyone argues to defend their truths. The fact of the matter is that there is only one truth. If you're not functioning based upon what is true, you are in fact functioning based upon a lie. Now, to state this more clearly, the ruling class used to control the masses through their monopoly over information. When they lost that monopoly, they now control the masses by keeping our minds dumbed down, believing in disinformation, misinformation, idiotic lies, and trivializing facts. They keep our minds away from meaningful information. Within the government, there actually exists a shadow government. This shadow government consists of a bureaucracy of ruling white elites that are involved in the secret manipulation and control of the society. You see, while presidents come and go, there are those who maintain their position of power, influence, and prestige regardless of who's in the White House. These are the true rulers of our society, and it's they that makes up and controls the shadow government. These ruling elites that makes up the shadow governments don't want intelligent, critically thinking populations, the masses. They instead want the masses that are just smart enough to work, pay taxes, and fight within their wars. This objective necessitates that they keep the minds of the masses dumbed down. This is our painful reality, a painful reality that millions of us have been brainwashed not to see. It is the real Matrix. In the Matrix film, Neo awakened to discover that humans were enslaved within a large pod being fed a virtual reality. The controllers of the pod programmed everything that the humans believed. They perpetually kept the humans trapped within a false version of reality that allowed them to exploit them without resistance. However, the real Matrix is not people being trapped within pods being fed a virtual reality. That's totally science fiction. Public perception of reality is shaped by the narratives that are fed into a society. Therefore, those who write the narratives that are fed into a society are able to shape the public perception of reality in ways they want it to be seen. Because these white ruling elites write all the narratives that are fed into our society, they've misshaped the perception of reality. They've distorted it in ways that it serves the system of white supremacy. The real and true Matrix is a false, illusory worldview grafted upon us from birth by the white ruling class that have fed lots of disinformation into our society. The history we've been taught is a lie. Religion is a control system. Media is manipulation. Governments are corporations. Neanderthals are presently masquerading themselves as being the highest evolved Homo sapiens, while falsely depicting the true Homo sapiens, as being the lowest evolved Homo sapiens. We've been lied to about everything, and we're still being constantly lied to about everything. The worst aspect of this scenario is the fact that when people have been fed lies long enough, they'll begin functioning based upon the lies, and they'll reject any and all evidence that proves they've been lied to. Those lies totally imprison them, and they'll perceive anyone who tries to free them from those lies as being their enemies. The lies, in fact, make them become the warden of their own mental prison, and this is by deliberate design. It was determined a long time ago that solely keeping a people ignorant is not enough to keep them mentally enslaved, because the ignorant mind inherently asks about everything. The ignorant mind is often inquisitive and searches for answers. To successfully mentally enslave people, they must be given false information, false knowledge. When people are given false knowledge, believing is true, they stop searching for the truth. Their minds stop being inquisitive, and they can then be mentally enslaved forever because they believe the false knowledge is true. This is our hidden reality of how the masses are kept mentally enslaved by those who controls the flow of information. They fed us many lies, and then our collective minds function based upon those lies. It's what's called the illusory truth effect, also known as illusionary truth effect. The illusionary truth effect is when people have been made to believe that false information is true because of repeated exposure to the false information. And then they begin functioning based upon the false information rather than what's actually true. This then leads to what's known as a self-fulfilling prophecy. A self-fulfilling prophecy is a process through which information that was originally false leads to its own confirmation. In a self-fulfilling prophecy, people start functioning based upon a false information, never realizing that their perception is that their perception of false information is what gives it its power, but it's not real. No, I never said that what I teach will be easy for all to comprehend. I only said that it will be the mental liberating truth, the truth of our plight and condition. While the entire masses are all mentally enslaved by lies created by a group of ruling white elites, the mental enslavement of black people is the worst. Because unlike the white masses who benefits from the lies, given that the lies told by the white ruling elites falsely exalts their racial group, those lies falsely marginalize and denigrates black people. White social scientists determined a long time ago that by marginalizing and negatively distorting virtually everything that black people believes about ourselves, they could condition us to perceive ourselves through a false inherent inferior identity that aids the white society in maintaining their social dominance over black people. Moreover, that this could create black self-hatred and disunity, which attacks the core foundation of advantage as a people, and we can then be ruled over forever. The white oppressor's monopoly over information has always represented a tyranny of the white society's power over black people. The white society sits upon a throne of white exalting, black marginalizing lies. The nefarious whitewashing practice is called Orwellian propaganda. Orwellian propaganda are societal conditions created and sustained by misinformation, distortion of facts, denial of truth, and even the manipulation of the past to falsely exalt Caucasians while falsely marginalizing black people. White historians justify this unethical practice by saying that it's customary for conquerors to distort facts and rewrite history to favor themselves. However, the true reason it's being done is much more self-serving of the white society. The first reason is because, according to white social scientists, in order for a dominant group to maintain its position of social dominance over its subordinate groups, the narratives fed into a society must endorse the dominant group's position of social dominance. This exaltation of the dominant group conveys the subliminal message that the dominant group is inherently superior and is therefore supposed to rule over its subordinate population. This means those narratives fed into society must falsely exalt the dominant group. White social scientists describe this nefarious practice as merely instilling a value system into the collective minds of the subordinate population that makes them adhere to the authority and existing infrastructure of the dominant culture. Those among the subordinate population who don't truly think never notice their mental change. The second reason why the whitewashing scheme is being done is because, also according to white social scientists, they theorize that a people's future is predestined by the history they're taught to believe by themselves. According to their theory, an inspiring history is required to achieve an inspiring future because people references their future capabilities based upon their past achievements. More specifically, people references those past positive information about their particular group to acquire a positive self-image and confidence that inspires their future. In a sense, the past can be treated essentially as a set of conditions that justify or encourage future goals. People then references their potential and capabilities in relation to the history they're taught to believe about themselves. The true history of Caucasians does not inspire their future aspiration of their racial group. Therefore, the history we've been taught has been intentionally whitewashed to make Caucasians appear more significant and relevant throughout history than they truly were, therefore inspiring the future aspiration of their racial group. It also provides the Caucasian with a false historical platform that endorses the myth of their racial superiority. According to white social scientists and Orwellian propagandists, truth is not important for steering a society or for inspiring a people's future. What's only important is what's perceived as being true. People function based upon their perceptions rather than what's actually true. This is why social science says perception is more important than reality for controlling people. The true history, as I said before, the true history of Caucasians does not endorse their current position of dominance, nor does it inspire the aspiration of their racial group. Therefore, this whitewashing of their history books achieves that objective. They whitewash their past to give their racial group an inspiring future. This nefarious social science practice is what's meant when white social science says that those who control the past also controls the future. The general population doesn't know what's happening, and it doesn't even know it doesn't know. Noam Chomsky said that. Because of this whitewashing practice, the collective self-esteem of Caucasians has been falsely bolstered at the expense of the collective self-esteem of Black people. Case, point, and proof. The history we've been taught has been whitewashed to make it appear that most inventions that have revolutionized the world were made by Caucasians, while also miseducates us to believe that Black people are the leeches of society that haven't invented much throughout history. Because of this miseducation, millions have been misled to believe that Black people are moving forward into the future, benefiting from the great minds of Caucasians. It's the number one talking point for most white racists. However, it's totally untrue. The true reality is in fact the exact opposite from what they've miseducated millions to believe. A hidden historical fact that has been withheld from our whitewashed history books is that within 80 years following the abolishment of slavery, and in spite of receiving no reparation and being rocked by cultural traumas caused by the continued injustices of white racism that followed slavery, African Americans submitted 726 invention patent applications to the U.S. Patent Office. This is extraordinary, not only under those circumstances, but it even more than double the number of patents submitted by whites during the same period. This scenario of Black people outperforming whites in the invention of revolutionizing inventions has never ended. It's merely hidden. The hidden fact is that in spite of cultural traumas wrought by the injustice of white racism and slavery, most inventions that have revolutionized the world were in fact either invented by Black people or were directly inspired by early inventions by Black people. Without Black people, there would exist no internet, no cell phones. We wouldn't have cameras and microphones on our cell phones. We wouldn't have the accurate weather forecasting system. We wouldn't have the cataract laser removal scope. We wouldn't have emails. We wouldn't have GPS, hearing aids, no touch-tone phones, no caller ID, no home surveillance security systems, no home game cartridges, no motorized vehicles, no steam engines, no traffic lights, no working light bulbs, no elevators, no skyscrapers, no air conditioning, no modern PCs, no color movies, no 3D movies, no refrigerators, no elevators, no washing machines, no refrigerated truck, no fiber optics, no female sanitary pads, etc., etc. The hidden fact is that most inventions that we routinely use every day came from the genius minds of black people. Black people have in fact enriched nearly every aspect of the lives of every person on this planet through our many inventions. When a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses over generation, the truth will seem utterly ridiculous and the speaker a raving lunatic. The truth of the matter is that white people invented the patent office and have always used it to steal the intellectual property rights from black people. In order for black inventors to get their inventions mass produced, they have to go before white companies. These white companies then acquires the rights to these inventions and then places white faces in front of the invention. This scenario literally allowed the white society to continue exploiting the intellectual genius of black people while maintaining the appearance that most inventions are coming from the minds of white people, thus aids in maintaining their social dominance over black people. White propagandists conceal the fact that most inventions are coming from the minds of black people through their whitewashing propaganda campaign that falsely gives credits to whites, which actually belongs to black people. All you have to do is keep repeating lies through media ads, falsely scripted movies, miseducation, and before long, the majority of the population will then accept those lies and start functioning based upon them rather than what's actually true. Those lies will become the truth that the public believes and then functions based upon. Repetition makes false information appear to be truthful. It's a true social science. Case, point, and proof. The white society miseducates us by teaching us that Thomas Edison is responsible for lighting up the world. However, the true facts are that after Thomas Edison patented his light bulbs, no companies purchased it nor mass produced it. This is because it was deemed not efficient enough. It lit very dimly and lasted only a few minutes. The inventor, whose light bulb was purchased and mass produced, and that was spread throughout the world, was in fact invented by an African American named Lewis Latimer. He sold the patent to the U.S. Electric Company in 1881. He was also dispatched around the world to oversee its installation. Therefore, in reality, it was actually a black man that lit up the entire world. While it's Edison who's giving credit, but his light bulb was in fact inferior. It lit very dimly, only lasted a few minutes, and was never sold. But yet they shift things around, they distort facts to create the illusion that it is Edison light bulb. It is he is given credit for lighting up the world. The hidden reality is that it was an African American who lit up the world. The narrative fed into our society must endorse the white society's position of social dominance. So therefore, they distort facts. They feed a narrative into our society that exalts them and marginalizes us. They say the truth would undermine the white society's social dominance over black people. So rather than allow the truth to go through, they feed us lies. The white society also miseducates us by teaching us that the ancient Egyptians of Africa were ridiculously Europeans. However, all scientific evidence proves that they were in fact Africans. The geographical location of Egypt, places Egypt in Africa. Radiocarbon dating testings have scientifically proven that the ancient kingdom was built by Africans thousands of years, long before the arrival of the first Arabs and the first Europeans during the 7th century. Hair sample testings, melanin skin testings, bone density testings, and DNA genetic testings have all scientifically irrefutably proven that Africa's ancient Egyptians were in fact Africans. DNA analysis conducted on December 2012 through January 2013 of mummies Pharaoh Tutankhamun, Ramses III, Ramses IV, and many others by DNA Tribes, an American company that specializes in conducting DNA testings, have scientifically proven that Africa's ancient Egyptians were in fact Africans. Their DNA matched current-day sub-Saharan Africans. More specifically, their DNA testing proved that they belong to the Y chromosome E1B1A. This is the Y chromosome group of sub-Saharan Africans. These results were published in the DNA Tribes Digest of February 2013. The history we've been taught has been whitewashed to make whites appear more significant while marginalizing black people, to propagate the myth of white racial superiority. Then, to stifle our future aspiration of black people, the white society miseducates us to believe that we Africans were illiterate and uncivilized before the Europeans invaded, and that therefore we have no significant history. They're doing the opposite to us, what they're doing to themselves. However, this is totally untrue. The hidden reality is that Africans introduced science, writing, math, and philosophy to Europeans. The world's oldest university, library, manuscripts, encyclopedia, human prosthetic, mathematical tools, medical journals are all located in Africa. Africans invented the wheel, paper, the calendar, the concept of 24 hours in a day. Africans are the first to build in stone and to smelt metal. Furthermore, long before the Europeans invaded Africa, it was Africans who civilized Europe. Africans introduced the daily bath to Europeans. This was when we were calling ourselves Moors. Okay, this Queen Isabella of Spain bragged that she bathed only twice in her whole life. Queen Elizabeth I claimed that she's the cleanest woman of all of Europe for reportedly bathing once a year. This changed when the Africans civilized them. Introducing a daily bath to Europeans was just one of the many hygiene practices taught to them by Europeans. Taught to Europeans by Africans. During medieval times in Europe, when they needed to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, they would relieve themselves within chamber pots they kept under the beds. But that's not the worst part of it. Other than the putrid smell that would be lingering constantly, the way they would empty it, the chamber pots, was revolting. When the time came to clean it out, they would just simply walk over to a window and dump it into the street. As if bad hygiene wasn't enough to the trouble of the personal health, just as people stroll down the road walking, they would be exposed to the filth. Due to this fact that people were tossing their chamber pots all over the street, the common area was often vile. But when the rainfall entered the picture, it was even more disgusting because the rain would wash it into the filth, wash it into the streets. And then it would fall into the ditches. This is how they lived. But see, this is not the history that we're being taught. We are taught a false version of history that exalts whites and marginalizes black people. The Europeans also used urine as laundry detergent. Urine in medieval time was used for a handful of different purposes, and it's hard to decide which is more disgusting. First of all, urine was employed as a form of antiseptic, believing to be the key ingredient in cleaning people's wounds. But it didn't stop there. Urine had yet another, perhaps more surprise use. To clean their clothes, they would mix urine with ash and lye and green apples, making a cleaning substance that they would use. All of these facts, they stopped when the Africans introduced them to hygiene. It even goes on. Up until the Europeans were eating mummies as medicine. Okay, in late centuries, unmummified corpses were passed off as mummy medicine, and eventually some Europeans no longer cared whether the bodies they were ingesting had been mummified or not. The eating of Egyptian mummies reached its peak in Europe by the 16th centuries. Mummies could be found on shelves, body parts on shelves. They would sometimes break them into powders. Mummies and other preserved as fresh human remains were a common ingredient in their medicine. In short, not long ago, Europeans were cannibals. The practices peaked in the 16th century, and many Europeans, including royalty, priests, and scientists, routinely ingested human remains. Bones, blood, and fats were used as medicines for headache, for epilepsy. Mummies were stolen from Egyptian tombs, and their skulls were taken from to Irish burial grounds. They ate. The fact is that the history we've been taught has been completely whitewashed to make Caucasian appear to be superior. Because according to social sciences, the history taught to a society, in order for a dominant group to maintain their position of dominance, the history fed into a society must endorse their position of dominance. And this is the hidden reality. We are functioning based upon false narratives that was fed into our society by the ruling elites. The masses don't know it. The arrogant, narcissistic perceptions held by many whites, they don't know. It's because the white masses have been miseducated. They don't know they've been lied to. The entire system is a lie created by a few people who control the narratives that are fed into our society. And they exploit their control over narrative to create a perception that supports the system of white supremacy. The white society entire collective self-esteem was built upon the backs and at the expense of the collective self-esteem of black people. Social scientists said doing so is necessary for maintaining white social dominance over black people. This is why we call it the Black People's Matrix. We are being lied to. As long as whites are controlling the narratives, those narratives will always serve the system of white supremacy. By denigrating our image, this creates false assumptions within the society that aids the white society in maintaining their social dominance over black people. This is our hidden reality. Those of us who don't research facts, who don't critically think, many black people become self-loathing. And we start to believe there's something lesser about us and more about whites. It is a social science that's being used for maintaining white dominance. A social scientist that was built upon lies. The entire system, the white society sits upon a throne of lies. Those lies, as long as we believe those lies, they're able to keep us mentally enslaved. This is our hidden reality. You know, it is time for us to elevate our minds above a biblical fairy tale and a silly slave syndrome. We must develop the reality of our society, the reality of our condition and plight. It is time to wake up to our reality. It is time. We, African Americans, have now been in America for more than 403 years. If your analysis about our plighted condition is that we're being controlled by Willie Lynch myth, you need to wake up. Black people, wake up. We must always question our perception of reality when it's being exclusively controlled by the white society. Because whenever the perception of reality has been exclusively controlled by history's proven most notoriously racist, deceitful, and most narcissistic group of people, they'll always distort the perception of reality to falsely exalt themselves and falsely marginalize us. It's the racist and narcissistic people they inherently are. It's the way they've always been, and it's the only way they know how to be. They have created a prison for our minds. I'm trying to show you the door, but you're the one that has to walk through it. One love and peace.